So this is going to be an unscripted video going over the recent conference that discussed all of the PlayStation 5 specifications. Not everything, there's some things missing, but I want to make this clear. There was a lot of people watching, and during the conference there was so much technical jargon, technical information that I guarantee you that most of the 600,000 people that were watching with me on YouTube did not understand what was going on, myself included. There was a lot of confusing stuff, but from what I got from the conference and looking at articles around the internet and looking at some people who understand what's going on more so than I do, I've been able to summarize the important information, or what I personally consider the more interesting information, and what I hope is for you the more interesting information from the conference, in 5 points, with the last point being probably one of the most interesting ones of all. But to dive into it, and again, not everybody who's watching and most of the people that are going to be talking about this don't understand how everything or every part of each of these systems work. There's a lot of information that we don't understand. But to dive into it, the CPU and GPU. The CPU of the PlayStation 5 will be 8 Zen 2 cores at 3.5 GHz. For comparison, Xbox Series X runs at 3.8 GHz. The GPU will be 36 compute units at 2.3 GHz at 10.28 teraflops. The Xbox Series X, for comparison, has 52 compute units at 1.82 GHz at 12 teraflops. Both systems will be using RDNA 2, which we've mentioned before, thanks to the AMD conference that happened not too long ago. The RAM of the PlayStation 5 will be using 16 gigabytes of GDDR6 memory. Sorry, I keep messing that up. But moving beyond that, we also have the SSD as the second point, and the SSD seems to be the biggest focus for Sony when you watch this conference. They spent a lot of time on it, and it seems that the SSD is the big focus, and we've been hearing that already, but it's more clear than ever now thanks to Mark Cerny and his discussion. And again, there was a lot of information that a lot of people didn't understand, but I'm going to go through the information that is what I thought was important and what I think you guys would care about as well. So it'll be an 825 gigabyte drive. So I personally, when I heard that, I thought that meant it'll be a 1 terabyte drive with some of the memory used for the OS, but from what I'm hearing around the internet, it's actually 825 gigabyte drive in total. That's the drive for the PlayStation 5. But the input and output speeds of the SSD technology that the PlayStation 5 is using will be 5 gigabytes per second for raw information, and in comparison, the Xbox Series X speed is 2.4 gigabytes per second. So in comparison, the PlayStation 5 runs at twice the input and output speeds of the Xbox Series X. And more so, Mark Cerny dove into compressed information, and it can pull between 8 to 9 gigabytes per second for compressed information. They mentioned this thing called the Kraken compression, but that's beyond me, honestly, and I think that's beyond a lot of people that were watching. The PlayStation 5's SSD will be using PCIe 4.0 NVMe slots for expandable storage, and I think we mentioned that in the past, that it'll be using PCIe 4.0 in older videos talking about the SSD, but it'll have a slot in the back similar to the Xbox Series X. But the difference here, and it's pretty big, is that it doesn't require proprietary technology like the Xbox Series X does. I think Sony learned from the PlayStation Vita days not to use proprietary tech, but what that means is you can use PC SSDs and those will work, but from what I'm hearing from Eurogamer, it'll take some time for the newer PCIe 4.0 based SSD drives with the bandwidth required to match Sony's spec to hit the market, and when they do, they will be expensive. Just expect that they will be expensive. But don't buy any NVMe SSDs without Sony's approval, whichever one. They have to certify the SSDs to use for the PlayStation 4, so don't get any that's not approved by Sony at launch, or beyond that, wait for Sony to approve some of these. Cerny also mentioned installs and patch updates, and these are his words: there are no installs as you know them today. So again, that's probably just super fast installs and patch updates. But beyond that, he also talked about loading times and that this is the end of loading times as we know them today as well. So basically, speed is a very important part for the PlayStation 5. Now, jumping from SSD to 3D audio, we've heard about 3D audio, and 3D audio is also another big aspect of the PlayStation 5. The PlayStation 5 will be using something called a Tempest engine, and there was a lot of technical information again thrown about, but the gist that I understood from this was that the PlayStation 5, the 3D audio, will allow for a richer audio experience where instead of just being able to tell, and this was an example I think Mark Cerny described, where, and he used Dead Space as an example in the conference, instead of being able to tell where something is coming from and noise, like a direction is coming from the left or right, you can tell exactly where that noise is coming from. Instead of just left or right, you can tell exactly where that's coming from, behind you where exactly it's coming from, behind, above you, left, right, wherever it may be. But it also goes deeper than that. Sony wants to make you feel you're in whatever environment you're set in. If there is a big rainfall happening, you can hear the shower of rain around you and every drop. And I guess this goes along with the controller and the adaptive triggers and all of that to make you feel like you're there as well. Sony really wants to immerse you into the console more so than ever, immerse you into the game more so than ever. But for the audio, this audio setup will be using this thing called HRTF, or Head Related Transfer Function. And from my understanding, it's a way to get the best sounding audio for each individual. We all have different ears, they're all shaped differently inside, the canals are different. But at launch, Cerny mentioned there will be 5 HRTF options, and more will be added as time goes on to investigate people's different ears and how they work, obviously. But there will be tests to see which one is the best for you. So I'm assuming there will be an option in the PlayStation 5 where it'll allow you to basically test which HRTF option is the best for you to get the best 3D audio sound for your specific ear. And moving on beyond 3D audio, we have backwards compatibility. PS5 can play PS4 games. We've heard this for a while, but I remember I mentioned to you guys a while back that we heard talk that the PlayStation 5 might not be able to play all PlayStation 4 games. At launch anyways. And it's mentioned here, Mark Cerny has mentioned that at launch, the PlayStation 5 will support the top 100 PlayStation 4 games, and I assume more will be added as time goes on. You could also run PlayStation 4 games often at a regular HDD drive similar to the Xbox Series X with Xbox One games, but with PlayStation 5 games, they're meant to be installed on specific SSDs that Sony will approve. And beyond backwards compatibility, the price. This is of course not something that was mentioned in the conference, but based off the information we're getting on the PlayStation 5, it'll be cheaper than the Xbox Series X, it seems. The $399 could be a possibility, I guess. It looks like it'll be between $400 and $500, with the Xbox Series X being around $500 to $600 in that ballpark. But that's basically it. That's a lot of the most important information that I gathered from the conference, and what I got from it is that Sony, more so than ever, is trying to immerse you in the experience but also not gouge your wallet, I guess. And speed is really key. Backwards compatibility of course is important, but speed and 3D audio and making you feel and make you feel like you're in whatever environment you're in, to make it feel like that on the controller, to make it feel like that in your ears, to immerse you as much as possible into next generation games seems to be the key. And a $399 price or a cheaper price is also not a bad idea. But again, in terms of teraflops, 10.28 teraflops is not far from 12 teraflops overall, so I don't think that, again, it's more than teraflops in terms of performance when we get into the next generation. And I've mentioned this in the past, a bunch of videos. If you go through my past videos, I've mentioned that teraflops are not the only important piece of information. There's a lot going on behind the scenes beyond that. But that's it for this video. Let me know what you guys think in the comments below. What do you guys think about the SSD, the CPU, the GPU, the backwards compatibility, the 3D audio, all of that great stuff that we just talked about in this video? Let me know what your thoughts down in the comments are. And if you guys did enjoy this video, please hit that like button as it always helps, and subscribe if you're new. I got new videos every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. And now I'll check you guys out on the next one.